And you are Elizabeth Bono, is that correct?
Yes.
If you'll raise your right hand, please. Ma'am, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this court, in the matter now pending, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name for the record.
Elizabeth Bono.
And traditional spelling of Elizabeth?
Yes.
Bono, B-O-N-O?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Bono, what is your occupation?
I am currently the foster care administrator in Walker County for DFCS.
All right. And how long have you been with DFCS?
Almost 8 years.
Now, do you have to have any training to become employed with DFCS?
Yes.
Okay. And what particular training have you had?
You have to have your bachelor's, and then when you start, you go through, I went through 8 weeks of foundational training when I was a case manager. When I became a supervisor, I had to go through additional 4 weeks of training. And then we are required to do yearly certification training, every year.
Okay. And you kind of touched on it, but let me ask you, what roles have you held at DFCS?
I've been an intake case manager in Floyd County. I was a foster care case manager in Gordon County, which was the role that I had during this case. I was a foster care supervisor in Gordon County, and now I'm the permanency administrator in Walker County.
All right. Now, when is it that DFCS becomes involved with a family?
Generally, when a report is made, it goes to the central intake. Then they decide the severity of it, if it needs to be screened in or screened out. They'll give a time as to when you can meet response time and see that child if they do decide to screen it in, and then investigations or on call. If I'm on call, I'd go, but generally it's investigations would go out and see the child and the family.
Okay. And so you talked about investigation. Is that kind of the first line of DFCS that would be involved with a family?
Yes.
Okay. What happens after investigations?
They have 30 to 45 days to complete their investigation. Sometimes, if you go out there and determine that something needs to happen, like a safety plan or custody, they'll go ahead and do that. And so as soon as they determine, that the case needs to be going longer than 45 days, they'll either assign it to family preservation where the child stays in the home and they work with the family, or they'll request custody from the judge, and the judge will determine if the child should come into care or not. And if the judge determines that there is a safety concern, then the child would come into foster care.
Okay. And so let me make sure I've got this right. So after investigations, there's 2 avenues that it could go through if it still needs to be open, family preservation or foster care.
That's correct.
Did I summarize that? Okay. Now, how is it that cases come in and get assigned to particular people? Is it?
It gets sent to our county. I think every county probably does it differently. Generally, there's a rotation. There's a rotation in Gordon County, and so as cases come in, whoever's next on the rotation would be assigned to go out and do that investigation.
Now, when a case is sent to foster care, is there ever an ultimate goal for DFCS?
Yeah, permanency would be the goal. We always start with reunification unless there's extenuating circumstances, and then beyond that, there's a process. So you would start with reunification, usually around the 6 to 9 month mark. If there's no progress, there would be a determination as to whether or not the case would go concurrent, where you would work reunification and another option, whether it be adoption, guardianship, or APLA, which is a child aging out of care. At 15 months, we're required, if there's no progress, to state if we're going to file for termination.
Okay. We've used some words that we may or may not know
Sorry.
what's going on. No, it's fine. So what is reunification? What does that mean?
When we're working a reunification case plan, we're providing services to the parents so that they can resolve the issues of dependency. So, for example, if a child came in for substance abuse, we would provide them with a substance abuse assessment. We'd get the recommendations. We'd provide them with a rehab or, drug testing, things like that, so that they can work those services to hopefully resolve their substance abuse issues, and then the child could go home.
Okay. And you talked about permanency. What does that mean?
permanency means that it's the permanent where the child's going to be. So the permanent option for the child long-term. You can get permanency through going home. You can get permanency through adoption. You can get permanency through a guardianship, things like that.
Okay,
But the best way to get the child out of foster care.
I see. All right. Now, have you ever been involved in a case regarding Jamison Timms?
Yes.
All right. Now, what was your role in working with Jamison and his family?
I was the foster care case manager.
And what do you do as a foster care case manager?
We work with the families, but then we also monitor the child and make sure that the child is safe and getting all of their needs in foster care. We work with both the parents or the guardians and the child in the placement.
So, obviously, at some point, I guess there was a decision to take Jamison from his parents.
Yeah.
Is it- okay.
What?
I'll rephrase the
If you'll
question.
rephrase your question, please. I'll sustain the objection.
Was there a time where Jamison was taken from his parents?
Yes, at some point, UFAX was given custody.
Okay. And who made the decision to do that?
The investigators would have made the request and the judge would have made the final decision.
And when did you become involved with the case?
I was at the first hearing, the PPH. I think it was in January. It's within 72 hours of the child coming into care. I knew that I would be getting that case as the foster care case manager.
And what is a PPH? Sorry.
Preliminary protective hearing.
Okay. All right. And so where was it that Jamison was placed when he first came into care?
He was placed, I can't remember if he stayed a night in the hospital, but he was placed with, for the first little bit.
And how long was he there?
He was there, I believe, from January 15th, and then he went to the relative placement at the adjudication hearing, which I believe was the 28th of January.
And you said the relative placement?
Yes.
What is that?
So when kids first come into foster care, we look for relatives that would be an appropriate placement. We were able to identify a relative and move Jamison to be with family.
And who was it that he was placed with? And do you recall their first names?
Brittany and it just left me. I forget his first name. Brittany
Okay.
was who I interacted with the most.
Okay. Now, you said it was a family relationship?
Yes.
Okay. How was Brittany related to the Timms?
She was paternal aunt, so she was the father's half-sister.
You said half sister?
I believe so, yes.
Now, during the time, let me back up. I guess as the foster care case manager, are you responsible for any type of visitations?
Yes.
Okay. How does that work?
We meet with the parents monthly if they're willing to meet with us. We meet with the child. We have to see the child at least monthly in the home usually, or we can see them at daycare.
And so were there visitations in Jamison's case?
When you say visitations, you mean me visiting or the parents?
I'm sorry, I mean parent visitation. Nope, that's okay, I understand. There's two different types, so.
Yes, there was court-ordered visitation.
All right, and so how did those start out, parent visitations, in this case?
The initial visits were at the office. However, I did a visit in the placement's home.
Okay. And so how often were these, or I guess, are there any regulations regarding the visitation with the parents?
These visits were court-ordered to be supervised.
And I guess, how often were those visits? Or was that set?
It was, there was a lot of discussion around visits. I know I did the 4-hour visit, but they were also permitted to visit with the relative supervision. So I'm not exactly sure how much time they had with the child.
Okay. So you said that you sat in on one 4-hour visit?
Yes.
Okay, and when, do you recall when that was?
I believe that was February the 6th of 2022.
And where did you say that visit was taking place?
That took place at the home.
All right. And was there anything that you found noteworthy when you did that visit?
The visit occurred, I believe I sat at the kitchen table and they spent most of the time around the kitchen island. The mother was quite bonded to the child. She held the child for 2.5 hours straight, didn't put him down. When it was time for her to eat, she handed the child to the father, who promptly put him in the bouncer. There was not much interaction between the father and the child, but the mother was extremely focused on the child.
Now, were the visitation restrictions, were those ever modified? I guess, let me ask, did you have to be there for all of the visitations with the parents between them and Jameson for the whole time that he was in care?
No, that was the only visit that I did.
Okay. Did the department have to monitor all of the visits?
We provided some supervised visits and then some were done through the placement.
And when you say the placement, who was supervising the visits when those were done?
That would have been,
Okay. Were there any limitations on the visits? For example, how many they could have when those were being supervised by the?
no. So generally, we do have a set schedule of, 2 hours twice a week. This case, the judge had given a lot more visitation to the point where I don't think that we could provide a provider for the amount of visitation. And so they allowed to do those visits because we didn't have a provider able to go that many times. I think it was almost daily contact.
Okay. So as part of, as being, I guess, the foster care case manager, you said that you are seeing the child how often?
At least monthly.
Okay. Are you also involved with his care? His medical care and things like that?
Yes.
All right. Was there ever a time that you went out of state for this case?
Yes.
All right. Do you recall when that was?
April 27th of 2022.
All right. And where did you go?
We went to Boston, Massachusetts.
Can you tell us how that came about?
The family had found a doctor that they wanted to use in Boston and had requested that the child go. The department did not want the child to go to Boston. The judge ruled that the child could go to Boston, but that DFCS had to be present.
Okay. Now, was the appointment already made, or were you involved with the planning of that?
We were not involved with the planning.
Okay. Now, had anyone gotten permission from DFCS to take the trip?
No.
So when you say that Jameson was with the, did they have legal custody of him or just physical?
They had placement of the child, so Gordon County DFCS had legal custody. The parents still had parental rights, and then had placement. And so with placement, they do have the authority, they get a placement letter, they have the authority to enroll a child in daycare or take a child to the doctor. But that's more for either a routine checkup or an emergency, if they have to go to the emergency room.
Okay. And so you told us that it was April 27th that you went to Boston?
I believe so, yes.
All right. Did you go alone?
No.
Who did you go with?
I went with I went with Lindsay Bray, and she was filling in as supervisor at the time.
And was that your supervisor or,
She was supervising the case, yes.
I see, okay. Now, did the department pay for you all to go up there?
They did.
And where did you go when you first got there?
When we landed, we went to the address. It was something Newton Road. We had run into the placeman and the mother when we got there. And the address that we were at, that was not the right doctor's office. So we went to another building, which was also not the right office, and we eventually found his office somewhere on the university campus.
Okay. And who was it that you all were there to see?
Dr. Hollick.
So you said that where did you end up locating Dr. Hollick?
I believe it was like an adult psychiatric area. It was inside the Boston Medical University. But we went to so many buildings looking for this man, I couldn't tell you which one we were really even in.
Okay. Did you make any calls to anyone without telling me what they said? Did you make any calls to try to locate Dr. Hollick?
I did. I called Boston University.
Okay. And were you able to find out where you needed to go from them?
No.
So, but you did finally locate Dr. Hollick?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what occurred upon your encounter with Dr. Hollick?
Dr. Hollick met us in the main foyer area.
And without telling me what he said, just what happened upon your encounter with him?
Him and the placement and the mother were whispering to each other, and it was determined that DFCS was not going to be allowed in the room.
And did that ever change?
Yes.
Okay. Were you allowed to go back in the room?
I did not go in the room. DFCS was permitted to go into the room for a portion of the exam.
And you said you did not go in. Did someone else go in?
Yes, Lindsay went in.
Okay. And where did you go during the time that the exam, I guess that you weren't allowed to be in, where did you go?
I waited in the lobby,
Okay, how long were you in the lobby?
18 minutes.
And after the exam, what did you do?
Lindsay came down. The placement and the mother had stayed up with the child. We waited for a little bit, and then we left.
And let me clarify, when you were in the waiting room, where was Jameson?
He was upstairs.
Okay. Who was he with?
He was with the mother and the placement. Lindsay and I waited in the waiting room while they did a portion of the exam, and then we were permitted to, or Lindsay was permitted to go up, but Jameson was up there with them.
Okay. And so after, you said Lindsay came back down after the, that portion of the exam, then do you remember how long you were there after she came back down?
We waited about 15 minutes.
Okay. And what happened following that?
I can't remember if the mother and placement came down once we left or if we left before they came down, but.
Now, were there any other examinations or, I guess, consults with any other doctors that DFCS was not aware of?
I'm unsure. When I met with the placement, they had mentioned that Jameson was being seen by two different doctors, one in Germany and one in California. I asked repeatedly who those doctors were. I was informed to ask the attorney. We never did get the names of those doctors.
Okay. Had DFCS authorized the release of Jameson's medical records to go other places?
No.
Okay, did you speak to anyone about that?
No, nobody contacted me about it.
Okay, did you talk to the Timms family about sending records?
I informed the placement that we would have to know, as the legal guardian, who those doctors are. We usually have to sign off on those things, and that's why we needed to know the names of these doctors that they were consulting.
Was there ever a time when DFCS considered removing Jamison from the residence?
Yes.
Why was that?
There was a concern that they were allowing this child to be seen by doctors, refusing to give us the information. It seemed like they were very much working kind of against DFCS, and it was hard to assess that child's safety.
Now, did you all change, did he ever get removed from the Bullock residence?
He didn't. A meeting was held with the Bullocks and leadership, and it was determined that he would remain with the Bullocks.
Now, did you know the defendants outside of your work at DFCS?
No.
Okay. Do you have any kind of ill will or bias against them?
No.
Do you like keeping children away from their parents?
No.
As the case manager on this case, were you open to alternative ways that the injuries to Jamison could have occurred?
I always would just defer to the medical providers. I'm not a medical expert, and so we rely on the experts to tell us kind of what's going on in a case, whether it be people doing psychologicals, doctors, assessments, therapists. My role is just to provide the services for them to work and for these children to not be in foster care for any longer than they need to be.
Okay. And so you were, how long were you Jamison's foster care case manager?
I was the case manager until it closed in August. I believe I had started supervisor training in July, and so I wasn't as present. The Lindsay Bray handled a lot of the stuff later on.
Now, while he was, I guess you were his case manager, did you receive any reports of him having any injuries while he was in foster care?
No.
Any breaks or bruising that were reported to you?
None.
And were you having contact with Jamison?
Yes.
And were you also having contact with the during this time?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Swall. Any questions of this witness?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Ms. Bono.
Good morning.
I'm gonna ask you some questions, Ms. Bono, and forgive me, I don't know if anybody else from the department is going to be testifying, so if I'm asking you stuff that's beyond your purview, just let me know.
I'll let you
okay?
know.
So, a child comes into care, as we call it, and the goal that you said was permanency.
Yes.
And the parents from whom a child is removed are typically given a set of things to work on, or goals, what we in juvenile court would call a case plan.
That's correct.
Is that correct? And you mentioned that there was a PPH, or preliminary protective hearing, and there was an adjudication hearing in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, there were multiple adjudication hearings.
Okay.
But
One
yes.
hearing that lasted several days, is that
Yes.
right? Okay. And was a case plan ever developed?
It was.
Okay. And do you recall any of the goals on that case plan?
I believe it was to complete a psychological, a parental fitness, to do parenting, to follow the recommendations of the assessments. I don't think there was anything beyond that. There might have been a DB assessment as well that we would have asked.
Okay. And I'm not seeking any information contained in any report, but to your knowledge, did these parents complete those requirements?
They completed the assessments, yes.
Okay. Were they cooperative in completing those assessments?
They were cooperative. I believe one of the assessments showed that they were defensive, but yeah.
Again, I'm not asking
Sorry.
you for any conclusions from any reports. Since you referenced it, the assessment that found one of the parents to be defensive was retaken, was it not? At the request of the provider.
I can't remember, but it sounds likely.
Okay. And while they're doing all this, they're getting visitation, first with the foster parents, then with the aunt
Correct.
and her husband. And the husband's name in that case is Jake. Does that ring a bell?
Jacob, yes.
Okay. Do you know how Mr. is employed?
He works, I believe he's a state trooper, or,
Okay, he works for the Georgia State Patrol, is that correct?
yes.
All right. So, in terms of interaction between the department and there was a fair amount of tension. Would that be fair to say?
I didn't have any tension with them, but I think there was definitely some tension.
Specifically, Jake at times did not appreciate how he was being treated by the department. Is that correct?
I wouldn't know.
Okay. Are you aware of any incidents that happened between any of your providers? And let me be clear about this. Y'all have what are called providers. They're people agencies that you contract with to come into people's homes and provide certain services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Are you aware of any tension or any disputes or any incidents involving Mr. and any of your providers?
I'm not.
Were you aware of an incident where an individual that was providing drug testing to Mr. a Georgia State Trooper required him to perform that test in front of his daughter?
I remember there being an issue with the drug screen, but I don't remember exactly what the circumstances were.
Do you recall there being a tension about the number of times that Mr. and his wife were being requested to submit drug samples? Again, a Georgia State Trooper?
I don't.
Do you recall there being any incidents where the department was showing up at these folks' house at what I would deem to be extreme times, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and demanding to walk through their home to see if Brady and Carrie Timms were there?
I do remember that happening on one occasion.
Okay. Again, the home of a Georgia State Trooper.
Yes.
You referenced that there was a meeting with leadership around the issue of whether or not these children were going to be removed from the you recall testifying to that?
Yes.
And in fact, there was a meeting between Mr. and the head of your state agency, Ms. Brose. Do you recall that?
I don't. I wasn't a part of that.
Okay. Well, in fact, you were supposed to be a part of that meeting and you did not appear. Is that correct?
No.
You don't recall that?
No, I don't, and I don't see how a case manager would, it would be more of a supervisor or a county director that would be more appropriate in that meeting.
Okay. After Mr. addressed his concerns with the head of your state agency, the decision was made that the child was going to remain with the. Is that correct?
I was not a part of that decision.
I'm not asking you if you were a part of it. That was the decision, correct?
The decision was for the child to remain with.
Regarding the trip to Boston, let me make sure I understand what your testimony is. You said that y'all found this doctor's office on the campus of Boston University. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there was some interaction between the child and a doctor that you say you were not a part of, that you were prohibited from taking part in. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said.
All right. What's your testimony?
He was up there. I don't know if he was examined. I wasn't in the room. From what I understood, they were only going to examine Miss because she didn't feel comfortable with us being in the room for her examination. However, I wasn't in the room, DFACS wasn't in the room when they were in there.
There was an issue when you and Ms. Bray presented at the doctor's office regarding COVID testing. And mind you, this was back in early 2022, is that correct?
That's correct, but
Right. That was the given reason as to why you were waiting where you were waiting and you were not in the doctor's office, was a lack of COVID testing, is that correct?
no. The COVID testing was not discussed with me. I stayed in the waiting room. They said one person could go. From what I understood, that was an issue once they got up to the examination room, but Ms. Bray would have to speak to that.
Okay. So if Ms. Bray was excluded from anything, that was the reason that she was excluded, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, you weren't trying to paint the picture in your testimony on direct, were you, that either these parties or some doctor in Boston tried to exclude 2 DFACS workers from examining this child? The fact of the matter is, based upon COVID testing and your lack thereof, you couldn't have participated in this meeting in his office regardless, correct?
No. The conversation down there was that Ms. was not comfortable and that we were violating her HIPAA rights by being in the room while she had her exam. So the determination was that she would do her exam without DFACS present. That's why she didn't want anybody in the room.
A room from which she would have been excluded regardless due to COVID testing, correct?
I'm not object, this is asked and answered, she said that she wasn't a part of the conversation about the COVID testing when it happened already.
I'll overrule the objection. I'll let him ask, and then they can move on.
I'll move on, Judge. Was that the only interaction that you're aware of, oh, strike that. Was that your only involvement with a medical provider outside of CHOA in this case, was your trip to Boston?
No.
Okay. Your department has an office at CHOA, is that correct?
There is a DFACS liaison at CHOA.
Okay. All right. And you indicated that part of the department's frustration with the was, as I heard it, your interpretation that they were seeking medical care not approved of by the department. Is that correct?
No, the concern was that they were not providing us with these doctors' names. We didn't know who those doctors were, any of that information.
Okay. And they, as the placement, however, have the authority to do that, correct? They could seek medical care for this child. They don't need y'all's permission to do that, do they?
Not necessarily. We're still the legal guardian. So they can, have medical needs taken care of in terms of going to a doctor's for your well check. Or, like I said, the emergency room if a staff member can't get there. But in terms of making medical decisions, the department is still very much the one that holds that responsibility. They can't sign for things like surgeries. They can't sign for any of that type of stuff. So we still need to be involved in those.
Okay, so how many medical doctors work at the department?
Work at the department. We don't have any doctors that work at the department.
Okay, so who amongst you would be able to determine what medical care was appropriate and what was not?
It wasn't a matter of whether or not it was appropriate. We just needed to know the name. We couldn't even get the name of the doctors.
Couldn't learn after the fact who they'd gone to see?
Well, depending on the appointment, we would have the right to be at those appointments because we're the legal guardian.
And they flew all the way to Boston and y'all flew with them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. It's not a circumstance, is it, where related to this case, you're okay with them getting medical care so long as it's been approved by the folks at CHOA before they get it?
No, I'm okay with him getting medical care when I know who the doctor is.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Bernard, any questions of this witness?
I do have a few, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Bono.
Good morning.
All right.
So when was your first interaction with Jamison Timms?
It would have been at the end of January. I don't know the exact date.
Okay. Was it while he was still in foster care with?
No.
So it would have been while he was in the care of.
Yes.
When did you first get staffed on Jamison's case?
I don't know the date of the first staffing. I was there for the very first PPH hearing and kind of started the case from there, got all the information. It officially comes to foster care around the adjudication portion. However, the adjudication took, I think, a couple months to get through, and so foster care started working it before that adjudication process was over.
Okay. What was your involvement in the decision to seize Jamison Timms from the Choa Hospital and kick his parents out of the hospital on January 14th?
Zero.
Okay, so were you aware of the case at that point?
I was aware that the case had come in. I was not a part of any of that.
How did you become aware that the case came in?
When the investigators reported that they were going to be asking for custody and foster care needed to know that somebody would be getting that case.
When did that happen?
It would have been mid-January, right after they would have taken custody.
Well, so just to narrow it down, the department instructed, or individuals from the department instructed Brady and Carrie Timms to bring Jamison to the hospital in Atlanta on January 13th, correct?
That's what the record says.
Well, and I just want to make sure, you know, as the DFCS representative who's testifying here today, and you're the case manager for Jamison Timms, right? Or you were at the time?
The foster care case manager, yes.
Okay, what's the difference between a case manager and a foster care case manager?
So, like I explained earlier, there's different avenues of DFACS. So it comes in for an investigations. They have 30 to 45 days to investigate. They're part of the investigators. I'm part of foster care. So I get a case after a child has been in custody from the judge.
Okay. Well, so I really want to drill down on this period in mid-January that Jamison was taken away from his parents and your involvement in that decision-making process. So were you aware of Jamison Timms' case on January 13th, 2022?
I was aware that the investigators were investigating the case, but I had no involvement in any of that.
Who were the investigators investigating the case?
April Hunt,
Who else?
it would have been the supervisor. Lori, I think, was still with us, Lori Stanfield.
Okay. Were there any other investigators working on the case that you knew of on January 13th, 2022?
I don't know.
Who would know?
The investigators?
Okay. Who you believe would be April Hunt and Lori Stanfield?
Yes.
Okay. And so your testimony just a few moments ago was that they wanted to take custody of Jamison.
They asked for custody from the judge.
When did that happen?
I don't know.
Who would know?
April Hunt.
Okay. So if April Hunt came in and testified that she did a home visit and found nothing wrong with Brady and Carrie Timms' home or Jamison Timms, would that surprise you?
I'm not part of the investigation. I don't know what that process looked like for them.
Okay, well, all right, so if I understand your testimony correctly, you got involved with Jamison's case after being told that the investigators wanted to remove him from his parents. Do I have that correct?
No.
Okay.
I got involved after the judge gave us custody. I went to the very first court hearing. We had already had custody. I was not involved in any of the investigation. I came in as a foster care case manager to start working the foster care side of the case.
Okay. And so I'm just trying to understand what the timeline was, not generally for DFACS, but for Jamison Timms specifically. Were
Okay.
you aware of his case on January 13th, 2022?
I was aware that there was a child that had come into care. That's what I knew.
When did you become aware that there was a child, Jamison Timms, who had come into care?
At the preliminary protective hearing.
Okay, so was that on January 14th?
I can't remember the date of the protective hearing.
Okay, so we're here for trial of Brady and Carrie Timms on being accused of abusing Jamison Timms, and you can't recall when the hearing was that you came into the case for DFCS on?
It was January, it was 72 hours after we took custody, so
Okay, so you hadn't had any hearing before a judge when you guys actually took custody of Jamison on January 14th, 2022?
there was no hearing.
Okay, so tell me about that decision that was made on January 14th, 2022 to take custody of Jamison Timms from his parents.
I can't tell you, I wasn't involved in that decision.
Okay, but were you aware of Jamison Timms' case at that point?
I was aware that there was a child that was coming into foster care. As the foster care worker, I'm not involved in any of the investigation. I'm not involved in removing children unless I'm on call. I get the notice that we have a new child in care, and I show up to court to start working the foster care side of things.
Okay, so who made you aware of the child coming into care?
It was probably April. It was,
Okay, and just to be clear, because, I understand that DFCS, y'all work with these cases all the time, but the decision to remove a child from the parent's custody and kick them out of the hospital would you agree that's a big deal?
anytime we ask for custody from a judge, it's a big deal, yes.
Well, but we haven't even gotten to asking for custody from a judge. We're talking about what was apparently a decision from the department, absent any judicial involvement, on January 13th or 14th that resulted in these folks getting kicked out of the hospital while y'all kept the baby. So tell me about your involvement and knowledge of that.
Nothing. I was not there. I was not a part of the investigation. I was not at the hospital. I did not make that decision. I did not know them getting kicked out. That's not my role or my scope in DFCS.
So whose role is it?
It would have been the investigator
So probably April Hunt or Lori Stanfield.
or whoever was there investigating. I don't know who was there that day.
Did you do any preparation in advance of this case coming to trial? Did you do any review of your former records and your interactions with the Timms family?
Yes, I reviewed my part of it as the foster care worker.
Okay. So did you review anything that told you about when and where you became involved in the case?
No, I believe that an investigator would have been subpoenaed.
Oh, well, yes, and April Hunt has already testified about not seeing any problems or injuries or anything going on. And should I assume that you are convinced that Jamison Timms was an abused child?
I only go off of what the medical providers are telling me. I'm not a medical expert. It's not my role to determine if a child has been abused or not.
Okay, so if the medical providers testified that it was not their role to determine whether a child should be removed, that it was in fact DFCS's role, who is right?
Well, removing a child and determining if they are a victim of physical abuse is two different things.
Well, I assume, in this case, that was the reason for your removal, was that you believed that Jamison Timms was the victim of child abuse, right? Would there have been any other reason for his removal?
No, the removal was because there were non-accidental injuries.
Okay. Who told you that there were non-accidental injuries?
The investigators did. I met with the doctors.
So let me be clear. When you say the investigators, you're saying April Hunt.
I can't remember if it was April. I just know that she was one of the main investigators.
Do you recall who told you that Jamison Timms was a victim of non-accidental injury?
I believe I read it in the complaint that was at the first hearing.
So who was that?
Whoever wrote the complaint, I'm not sure.
Let me turn to a different avenue. So you've been with DFCS for about 8 years, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so are you aware of the new memo that was produced by your Deputy Commissioner of Child Welfare at the Department of Human Services, Lon Roberts, regarding medically diagnosed child maltreatment assessments?
I'm sure I've read it. I don't know when it came out.
Okay. But do you know the memo that I'm talking about?
Not off the top.
Okay. Well, so if I told you that there was, in fact, a memo from Lon Roberts, Deputy Commissioner of Child Welfare, regarding medically diagnosed child maltreatment assessments, and it says that this is to strengthen the assessment of medically diagnosed child maltreatment, specifically any medical determination that a child's injuries are non-accidental. This memo serves to establish several practice enhancements. does that refresh your recollection about a memo governing the actions of your agency that you are now currently bound by?
Again, we get memos every day. I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
Ms. Bernard, let's
Your Honor.
take a break right there just a moment. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. And good afternoon,
Good
Ms.
afternoon.
Bono. Okay, did you have the opportunity to review any of your reports over the lunch break to determine which investigators spoke to you regarding Jamison Timms?
I don't think it was a specific investigator. The child came into care. There was talk around the office. Foster care was alerted that there was a child that had come into care. I believe they said it was Jamison Timms, but I didn't see the file. The stages weren't open or put on my load. And so when I first learned of the case was on January the 21st, 2022 at that that preliminary protective hearing.
Okay, so you first officially came on to Jamison's case on January 21st.
Yes.
So you were not involved in anything that was happening at CHOA from January 13th to January 15th?
No.
Okay. So did you ever meet or work with Nicole, the foster parent for Jamison Timms?
I know I spoke to her about the child because that would be considered my foster placement, but I didn't see the child in Nicole's home.
Okay. So when did you speak to Ms. about the placement?
It would have likely been at the January 21st hearing. I didn't place the child in the home. That initial placement is done by investigators.
Okay. And I believe January 21st, that was the hearing at which the child was transferred to the care of Brittany, right?
I believe that the child was transferred on the 28th hearing, January 28th.
All right. Let's see. And Your Honor, if I could approach the witness.
Certainly.
We got a copy of it. Printed in a better version. All right, and Your Honor, if I could approach the witness.
Certainly.
I am showing you the memo that I referenced prior to our lunch break. So if you might review that and see if you recognize it.
Yes, it's one of our memos.
Okay, and so what, you said, but you get, there's a lot of these memos that come through Department of Human Services and DFCS?
Yes.
Okay, and so this one, it's to child welfare leadership, so you would be in child welfare leadership, right?
Correct.
Okay, and it's saying that we need to strengthen the assessment of medically diagnosed child maltreatment, specifically any medical determination that a child's injuries are non-accidental, which, would you agree that that's the kind of case we're dealing with here, where there is an allegation that the child's injuries were non-accidental?
Yes.
Okay, and so does the memo say, effective immediately, the following steps must be followed in physical abuse investigations involving an assessment by a child abuse pediatrician?
Yes.
Okay. And so the first requirement is that the DFCS staff who serve as liaisons at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, referred to as CHOA liaisons, must be notified immediately about these cases and be involved in all case activity while the child is being treated by the hospital. Would you agree that's what the first step that must be followed in physical abuse cases investigations?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, was this procedure already happening prior to this memo being issued on February 14th of this year?
Yes, we coordinated with Ann Ray, the liaison at CHOA.
Okay. So Ann Ray has been looped in from the beginning on the Jamison Timms case?
Yes.
Is that accurate? Okay. When is the first time you spoke with Ann Ray about Jamison's case?
I didn't speak with Ann Ray.
Okay, so you never spoke to her,
No.
even though you were the foster care manager for Jamison?
Right, those conversations are held between the investigators.
Okay. Okay, and then, so the second step that's listed in the memo is the DFCS Safety Bridge will provide consultation and support to staff when cases involve other children's hospitals. Would you agree that's what is directed on the memo?
Yes,
What is DFACS safety bridge?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Have you experienced any issues when cases involve other children's hospitals with communication among the hospitals?
I haven't, but again, my role's limited to foster care, not the investigation portions.
Well, I believe you, so you've served in several different capacities with DFACS over the past 8 years, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But you've never had any occasion to interact with DFACS Safety Bridge?
No,
Have you had occasion to work on cases that have involved visits to Erlanger, T.C. Thompson up in Chattanooga, as well as Children's Healthcare of Atlanta?
in the foster care portion of it, yes. As far as investigating, no. The only time that I would do that is if I was on call, and that was generally just to lay eyes on the child, and then the investigations would pick it up.
Okay. And you said you didn't lay eyes on Jamison Timms until, what was the date that you first laid eyes on Jamison Timms?
It wasn't until after the 21st of January.
Do you recall exactly when it was?
I don't. I know that I did that visit on the 6th of February, so I definitely saw the child that day.
So it was sometime between January 21st and February 6th that you first physically saw Jamison Timms.
I believe so. I might have seen him at the office, but I couldn't tell you the date.
Okay. So the third step in the memo is that the CHOA liaison will ask the child abuse pediatrician to complete the new medical attestation form that he or she reviewed the child's medical history before he or she made the determination that the child's injuries were non-accidental. If the child abuse pediatrician does not complete the attestation form, the CHOA liaison must document their efforts to obtain a signed attestation and that the child abuse pediatrician failed or refused to sign whichever is applicable in the SHINE's log of contacts. Is that what the memo says?
Yes.
Okay. So have you ever dealt with any of these attestation forms with pediatricians?
I have not had to.
Okay. Would you, based on your knowledge and experience with DFACS, would you think that there would be any issue with the pediatrician responsible for making the diagnosis signing off on a medical attestation form with this information?
I'm gonna object to speculation. She's asking her to say what the doctor would or would not do.
Ms.
And
Bernard?
I certainly, I recognize that she potentially does not know the answer to the question. However, based on her experience with DFACS, she may have knowledge about whether there would be legal concerns or other reasons that a doctor might not want to sign this.
I'll let her ask the question in that form, so.
So do you know of any reason that a pediatrician would not be able to sign one of these attestation forms if they had completed the diagnosis and treatment of the child?
I don't have any experience with it, so I wouldn't have an answer.
Okay. All right, and then on the second page of the memo, under steps, unless prohibited or otherwise constrained by court order, the child's caregivers are authorized to seek alternative medical opinions or testing at their own expense without having to obtain prior approval from DFACS. The assigned CM must review all alternative opinions or test results, document them in SHINES, and notify the juvenile court, if applicable, through the DFACS Special Assistant Attorney General to ensure that the court can consider the results in any decision-making. Right?
Right.
That's what it says? Okay. And so this is, and then after that, it says, unless prohibited or otherwise constrained by court order, if the child is in foster care and his or her caregivers wish to seek alternative medical opinions or testings, the DFACS case manager shall coordinate with their supervisor, the child's caregivers, and if applicable, each of the parties assigned counsel to allow for the alternative medical opinion or testing to safely occur. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, were you familiar with any of the cases that led up to this memo being issued in February of this year?
No.
Okay. So in getting a second opinion, is that something that DFACS would object to in a case like Jamison Timms?
No.
Well, but DFACS did object in this case, right?
Yes.
So why did DFCS object to Jamison Tim's parents seeking alternative medical opinions?
It wasn't necessarily seeking alternative. It was the fact that we hadn't really been notified. When we were notified, there was little to no time to even give DFCS the opportunity to go, which we were able to go out of state. And then with the other doctors, we couldn't even get a name for the doctor. We were told to ask an attorney. So that's where the concern is. We've never once denied the child to go. We just wanted to be included in those conversations as the legal guardian.
Well, and I believe your earlier testimony was that the department did not want to let the child go to Boston for the medical opinion from Dr. Holick, right?
Not on that short of notice.
Okay, so, but your testimony earlier was that the department did not want to let the child go to Boston for the medical appointment.
At that time, yes.
Okay. What time did the department want to allow the child to go get medical assessment and treatment from Dr. Holick?
If there had been time for preparation, if there had been a conversation, if we had been privy to this information before these appointments were booked, things like that, that was the concern.
Okay, so but your testimony is that that it was merely like a scheduling and logistics issue that formed the basis for your objection?
I think there were a lot of concerns, but that was a big one.
Well, so what were the other concerns that made the department oppose the decision that the judge later said, yes, that you can go and take the child to this doctor? What were the other concerns the department had?
I think the biggest concern was that it appeared that this was being done without our knowledge, that they were going to take this child without us knowing, take this child out of state to a doctor that we don't know, and they were trying to almost hide it, is how it felt.
Okay. Why did it feel that way to you?
Because it was very quick. I can't remember who told us, but I don't remember it coming from the parents, and that's just was my assessment of the situation.
Okay, so when did you first learn about the appointment with Dr. Holick?
I learned about it from my supervisor. I can't remember the exact date. I just remember we had to work very quickly to get flights and things like that.
So what's very quickly?
I would say within a few days.
Okay. Okay. But the department didn't tell the judge, we would love to let them go take the child to the doctor, we just need a little more time. The department said, we don't want the child to go to Boston, right? That was the position that y'all took in court?
I'm not sure I didn't relay that information to the judge, so I'm not sure what was said.
Were you the one appearing in court on behalf of the department during those proceedings?
I was not the primary at that. I don't think we went to court for that. It was just a conversation. But there was other people that made that decision too, like my supervisor and the county director, the regional director was involved in that.
Okay, and your supervisor was Lori Stanfield?
No, it was Lindsay Bray.
Lindsay Bray. Okay, and then you mentioned the regional director was involved in the conversation too?
Yes, he was in the room.
And who was that?
Danny Knuckles.
And then you mentioned there was potentially someone else from DFCS who was involved in that?
The county director.
And was that Lori Stanfield?
No, that was Rachel Brooks.
Rachel Brooks. Okay. All right. Now, did you ever make any arrangements to do home visits with the Tims?
Like visit their home or do visits at their home? Can you elaborate?
Either one.
I don't believe I went to their home, and then the visits were done at the placement's home.
So, do you recall sending a text message to Carrie Tims on June 6th, 2022, setting up an appointment for Wednesday, June 8th for a home visit?
I probably did.
Okay. What was the reason you never came to the home visit?
I don't know. That was quite a few years ago.
But we're in court on it today, and you're a witness for the state.
Yes.
So are you saying you acknowledge you did not go to the appointment that you made with Carrie Tims to view her home, right?
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry?
No, I didn't.
And you don't, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you did not go to the home visit of the Tims that you had reached out to schedule with Carrie?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if something came up or if something was rescheduled.
So did you ever do a home visit at the Tims home?
I didn't.
Is that something that someone else working on Jameson's case would have had responsibility for?
Other case managers may have gone. Sometimes we help each other out, especially if have too many cases, so I'm not sure if somebody else went. I know there had been walkthroughs of the home.
So you knew that there had been other walkthroughs of the home,
Yes,
and those walkthroughs had not produced any concerns, correct?
correct.
And you were supervising some of the visits with Jameson and his parents, right?
I supervised one.
So you supervised one visit?
Yep,
And that was the one that you already told us about with Carrie holding the baby for 2 hours, et cetera?
yes.
So you didn't notice anything of concern for abusive treatment in that visit, the one visitation session that you supervised?
Not with the mother.
Well, I mean, are you saying that the father putting the child in the bouncer was evidence of abuse?
No. The only I noted of concern was that the father wasn't as engaged with the child, that he didn't really hold the child. The mother was a lot more, appeared to be bonded to the child.
Okay. Is that unusual for infants?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's never comfortable doing a visit with somebody watching anyways, so it's hard to, off of one visit, it's not easy to determine behavior.
Okay. And I believe you spoke to Mr. Hood regarding some of the interactions that you and your office had with who had custody of Jameson after he was moved out of foster care, right?
They had placement of Jameson.
Okay. And so you did many walkthroughs of their home, right?
I went to their home a couple times, yes.
Okay, do you remember about how many times?
3 or 4.
And was one of those times kind of in the early morning hours?
I did not know.
Okay, so you did not do any of the early morning visits, but you knew that there were some, in the wee hours of the morning, so to speak.
I know that they were doing a welfare check, but that was all I knew.
Okay. But there was no concern that was prompting the welfare check, right?
That was a conversation held by other people. I found out after the fact.
Who were those other people?
I believe Lindsay was involved. I think that there had been some discussion with CASA that would prompted that concern.
Do you remember who the CASA representative was?
Penny.
Okay. So did you have any other and then, I'm sorry, you said that your involvement in the case terminated in August of 2022, is that right?
August 4th of 2022 is when the DFCS case closed officially, but custody was given to the grandparents on July 28th of 2022, which would essentially end our interaction.
Okay, and you and the department opposed the closing of the case, right?
We did.
On what basis?
We felt that they were going around to get DFCS out of the picture.
Okay, I mean, on what basis, like what bad things were they doing to put Jameson in danger?
The department was against closing the case.
And that's why I'm
the
asking you why
position.
the department was against closing the case.
We felt like we wanted to continue working with the parents. We felt like we were waiting to see what this trial would hold. We felt like the child was with a relative, so to move from one relative to the next, it was just not our stance. We wanted to keep our case open.
Well, I mean, had you observed any injuries or maltreatment to Jameson Timms?
No,
Okay. Had you observed any bad conduct on the part of Brady or Carrie Timms?
I didn't observe them with the child often. It was on the basis of wanting to keep the child and keep the case open.
I mean, was it a result of you observing anything about Jameson's condition that would lead to needing to keep him as a dependent of the state?
We weren't ready to reunify with the parents.
Well, and that was because this case was still open, right?
And we had concerns.
What other concerns did you have other than that the case was open?
We had concerns that they were non-accidental injuries.
Well, right, that's the case. And so,
Yes.
but those concerns were based on what you had been told by medical providers. Were they any basis, what I guess I'm asking is if you made any observations about Jameson Timms or his family that you can tell the jury, I was worried about the safety of this child.
Not beyond what the medical reports were.
Okay, so your entire basis for pursuing the DFCS case, keeping Brady and Carrie Timms away from their child, was what the medical providers told you?
Yes, that was why the child was in care. Those issues had not been resolved. So we wouldn't send a child home if those issues weren't resolved.
Okay, but again, when you say those issues, do you have any independent information that you can share with the jury about these concerns, or are you just going off what you were told by medical providers?
I'm just going off what I was told by medical providers. We would never put a child in a situation where if they were unsupervised and the parents could re-injure them, I wouldn't put a child in that situation, which is why we do supervised visits.
Would it surprise you if the medical providers had testified that it wasn't their decision to remove the child, that that was solely a matter of DFCS discretion?
No.
Why would that not surprise you?
We are provided the information. If we're told that a child has a fracture on their 8th, 9th, and 10th vertebrae and, a laceration under their tongue, those are non-accidental injuries. We call the judge, we explain to the judge, these are the findings of the medical provider, and the judge grants us custody. It's not their job to take custody, that's ours, but we have to go off of the information that we're provided.
Okay, so you never looked at any of the x-rays, did you?
I personally did not.
Okay, you never looked at any pictures that Dr. Brown did or did not take, right?
I looked at the healing x-ray on the visit in June.
Okay, did you look at anything else?
No,
Okay, no further questions, thank you for your time.
thank you.
Ms. Law, anything else of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Hood?
Nothing further, Judge.
Ms. Bernard?
Nothing further, Your Honor, I will take my minutes.
Okay. May this witness be excused. Any objection? Okay. Mr. Hood, any objection?
No objection.
Ms. Bernard? Ma'am, thank you for coming. You're free to go. Who would you call next?